Hello everyone, this is Bob and Threadbare, and welcome back to Weaving Worlds. Have you ever wondered how life or society would change or look different if magic were real? Because it certainly wouldn't be the same as it is here and now. I mean, it might look the same in your setting if you choose to go down the old magic is real but hidden from normal folks route, but that's not what this video is about. For this video, I'm going to look at how magic could change the nature of society if it were both real and reliable. Now, the precise nature of this change depends on what other qualities magic has within your setting, so let's go through a few examples and see how things might go. Magic is dangerous. In most settings, magic represents a kind of power, and in that sense, magic is always dangerous. However, in some settings, magic is so dangerous that even a magic user who takes every precaution can end up dead, torn apart, lost in the astral realm, or corrupted to the point of losing all their humanity. Warhammer 40k is an example of this. Being a psyker, as they're called, puts a person in contact with the Warp, a realm of chaos, madness, and demons. Demons can use psykers to enter reality either through summoning or through possession, or they can just drive psykers insane so that they start destroying everything around them. Dragon Age has a similar setup, although their demonic dimension is called the Fade, and it's not entirely demonic. When magic is that dangerous, people will tend to avoid it despite its power, since it's not always worth the drawbacks. Those who can use magic will tend to be feared and hated by the general public, since memories of disasters last longer than memories of successes. Some societies may ban magic altogether, assuming it's possible to do so, and those societies that have to live with magic will place heavy restrictions and regulations on those who practice it. But if magic isn't too dangerous, the magic users might put themselves in charge of a nation, and rely on regulating each other if one of them goes crazy or gets consumed by demons. On the other hand, you could also create a magic system where the magic user is the only person that the magic endangers. Maybe using magic drains a person's life force and causes them to die young, or maybe they have to separate their bodies and souls to use magic and they don't always find their way back. In these cases, people in general will still avoid magic, but those who use it will be highly respected. They're putting their lives on the line after all, and because of that, magic practitioners will tend to be more selfless than selfish, since there are plenty of less dangerous ways of getting power. Alternatively, sacrificial magic could attract the desperate, the kind of people who have no other way of getting what they want or need. Magic is easy. In some settings, magic is as simple as waving a wand and speaking a couple of words. You do that and just about anything you want will happen. You can create things, destroy things, move things, kill people, bring back the dead, all that jazz. Maybe one or two things are harder than the rest, but anyone with access to magic can reshape reality as they see fit. You can take a magic system like this in a few different directions. One is to create a society that goes through a sort of magical industrial revolution, with magic and enchanted objects in place of electricity and other real-life innovations. Think of things like communication amulets instead of cell phones, airplanes powered by air elementals, pumping stations powered by water elementals, or a printing press that operates automatically and sets the script of each page by dictation instead of by hand. The Eberron setting for Dungeons & Dragons is a world in the midst of a magical revolution, as is the Avatar setting during the Legend of Korra series. Of course, the downside of easy magic is that everyone can reshape reality, including the kinds of people who should never have that kind of power at their disposal. If magic is easier to use and more powerful than things like electricity and gunpowder, your setting could become a very chaotic place, where nations never last more than a single lifetime and every would-be warlord takes a shot at being the biggest bastard around, only to be defeated by the next warlord to come along. It's sort of what you have in shows like He-Man, where small factions are all constantly fighting each other because it's impossible to concentrate power or keep it out of the hands of those who want to abuse it. Magic demands study. When this element is in play, magic demands years of dedicated study and research for anyone to use it properly. It could be that magic doesn't work at all unless you know the precise runes, hand gestures, and spoken words needed to activate a spell. And if that's the case, then new spells have to be discovered or invented after a lot of grueling trial and error. If that's the case in your setting, then only people with a higher education will be able to make full use of magic, and its ability to bend and warp reality. Education demands time and money, and so for the most part, the lower classes of a society will be unable to cast spells or understand magic. However, if a society is more modern, at least in terms of its education standards, then you could have a situation where a few basic spells are part of the universal education system, while specialized wizards work in a variety of fields, and universities have whole wings where academic wizards spend their time developing new spells and spell applications. In a more medieval setting, you could have magic users work alone, and take the occasional apprentice to continue the craft. Or you could have guilds, where membership is kept within the families and trade secrets are never shared with outsiders. Or you could have the secretive magic users in a more modern setting, and set up a magic versus science conflict where magic represents secretive guilds worried about losing their jobs and privileges, and science represents industrialization, with all the good and bad that entails. Magic is expensive. The idea of an equal exchange is very much a part of magical beliefs in real life. If you give something, then you should get something in return. That's just basic commerce. As such, you can very easily create a magic system that has a physical cost to it, either because you have to sacrifice regular resources to get magic to work, or you require a specific rare resource like a magical metal, or a specific kind of crystal. When magic is expensive but not hard to get, then magic will be used by communities and by the wealthy. Magic is effectively a form of power, and so the fact that you can spend money to get it wouldn't really change the shape of society that much. Wealthy individuals and nations already have power in real life, and magic would just become one more way to get it. However, if you need a rare resource to use magic, then things can get a little more interesting. Natural resources tend to be unevenly distributed, and nations that have them and know how to use them could have a chance to surge ahead of their neighbors. But then they also paint big targets on their backs, since everyone who wants the resource will go to war to get it. Now, historically speaking, technology and innovation have been much more effective at building empires than any set of natural resources. But when that resource is literal magic, then that could be enough to start an empire. Magic needs sponsors. Maybe in your setting, humans can't use magic, or at least not on their own. Instead, what they need to do is make contracts with demons or angels or other supernatural creatures. Or else gods are the source of magic, and all supernatural events can be traced back to the will of the divine. If that's the case with your setting, then the nature of the magical sponsor is going to make a big difference in how magic shapes society. If one god can produce miracles while other gods can't, then the god who actually does something is going to get more worshippers and attention. If a lot of beings can offer magic and similar powers but demand different kinds of tribute, then the people who regularly make deals with them are going to write down each one's offers and demands and compare them all to get the best deal. If magical beings can be captured and forced to provide their power to mortals, and if those magical beings are intelligent, you can end up with a magical allegory for slavery. Supernatural sponsors can give you a wide variety of options, especially since a lot of magical traditions involve contacting supernatural beings rather than using magic directly. Demonology in general, and the Lesser Key of Solomon in particular, are two sources that you can look at for inspiration. Magic is genetic. In a lot of settings, only specific people can use magic. You are either born with the gift, or you will be unable to use magic forever. In some of these settings, magic is explicitly tied to genetics and can be passed down through families, but in other settings, your magical ability is completely random chance. Also, while in some settings magic is something you either have or you don't, in other settings the amount of magic you can use can vary from person to person. If magic is genetic yet randomly distributed, then magic families will typically end up in charge of everything. After all, they have a natural source of power that others don't have, and nobody can take that power away from them. Unless magic is also expensive, in which case magic users are less likely to be in charge and more likely to be under the thumbs of those who are. After all, they're too powerful to leave to their own devices, but too limited to make the most of their power independently. If magic is genetic but unevenly distributed, that would mean that one or two ethnic groups can use magic while everyone outside of that group can't. Said group would most likely end up conquering their neighbors and setting up empires, but then if the group isn't careful enough, or if magic isn't powerful enough, the conquered peoples will eventually rise up and probably commit genocide. By creating a history of oppression and genocide, you can explain why only a few people can use magic in the present day of your setting, and why said people are feared and ostracized. If magic power is unevenly distributed, you can use it as an allegory for real-world genius and skill levels. This is especially true if magic in your setting also needs experience and training to use properly. Some people are naturally talented and coast on that talent. Some people work hard but don't get anywhere. And then the true masters of a craft both start with talent and train every day to make the most of that talent. That's true for all real-world skills, and likewise, it can be true for magic. Magic is returning. Now this is the really interesting concept. Magic has been gone from the setting for at least a few hundred years, or else it never existed in the first place, but now it's here. And a world full of cultures that have developed without any magic or supernatural interferences suddenly have all of that and don't know what to do with it. Shadowrun is definitely the go-to example of how this can play out. Traditional societies like China and Native American tribes got a massive boost in power since their old traditions now had magical backing, and more modern nations like the United States and Germany got smashed to pieces. These nations still had their old power bases, but because they couldn't keep up with the changes and they couldn't predict what people would do with their new power sources, they fell. You can also do this one in reverse. Magic is disappearing, either slowly or abruptly, and the societies and power dynamics built on magic are unable to deal with the changes. Violent shifts like these have happened in real-world history, and they usually start either because of a sudden climate shift or because a new technology comes along and it changes the relationship between nations or between wealth classes. Magic can have all kinds of features, and a lot of them can change the way society works, at least if its existence is common knowledge. By thinking these changes through and accounting for them in your cultures and nations, you can add a layer of verisimilitude and make your setting stand out from the crowd. Thanks for joining me again for today's journey into weaving worlds. Please like, share, and subscribe because that raises my visibility here on YouTube. Check out my other stuff if you have some time, support me on Patreon if you have some money, and I hope I'll see you again for the next video.